you unconventional conventionists, it's Aaron from Rocky Talkie. I just got an awesome package in the mail today, and I'm really excited to share it with all of you guys. It came all the way from the UK, so it was a little delayed due to the holiday mail traffic, but it got here just in time and I've got it in my hot little hands. Let's take a look. Check it out! Cosmic Light, the birth of a cult classic by Jim Whittaker. Oh man, this is so cool. I've been searching for this forever. Alright, let me tell you about it. So Cosmic Light, this book, was published in 1998 by Jim Whittaker. It was self-published. There was a limited run made that was only 1,000 copies. That's why it's so hard to find now. Rumor has it that it never got a reprint because Jim had to pay for all the rights for the photos that are in the book. There's a bunch of really cool ones in here. So why is this book so important? It's one of the earliest and best researched pieces on Rocky Horror history. It's the primary source that's used for the book Still the Beast is Feeding, which is one of the best books you can get right now about Rocky. In Jim's research for this book, he performed exclusive interviews with the cast and crew of both the stage show and the movie. I've heard about this book for years, but I've never been able to find a copy. Not online, not in stores, nowhere. In 2020, I found out that the New York Public Library had a copy, but they wouldn't loan it to you, they wouldn't ship it to you, you had to go in person to read it. So 2020 didn't exactly seem like the year where I wanted to go sit by a copy machine in a public library with a bag of quarters. Anyway, a copy popped up online later in the year. I immediately snapped it up, and well, that's why we're all here now. Let's do the time warp again. On first inspection, the book was everything I had hoped it would be. But I was in for a couple of really interesting surprises. I finished reading it a little while ago, and while the content is fantastic, there's a few caveats. I mean, it's so neat to see the original context for a lot of interviews and information that you see in books like Still the Beast is Feeding, the FAQ, and all the others that have come out since Cosmic Light was released. However, to call the book's actual production quality independent is very generous. It's clear that this was a typewritten manuscript that was duplicated and bound, but unfortunately, at least with this copy, the page alignment is horrible. It leaves the text not centered, it's instead crammed to the inner edge, with some of the text bleeding into the binding, which makes it incredibly difficult to read without bending the spine. I mean, it's a minor complaint, but for someone who's spoiled by reading on a Kindle, it's certainly made it more difficult to read than it needed to be. There's also a fair amount of just typos and misspellings, which is forgivable, but again, doesn't make it easy to get through. And honestly, a lot of the material is extremely dry. I mean, it's certainly fun to read, but the information is conveyed better in more modern texts. Again, Still the Beast is Feeding. That's, of course, to be expected. I mean, Cosmic Light came out in the late 90s, and it also shows in some of the facts that have since been clarified or just proven false over time. No place is this more apparent than the costume breakdowns, where we see the old classic that Eddie is wearing a motorcycle flywheel puller, and not a Milbro slingshot, as we finally discovered in the late 90s. But that's not all. I was in for a really awesome treat when I flipped to the title page of my copy. Not only was this copy signed, but it had an extremely interesting inscription. It reads, "For Patty, thanks for the interview, Jim Whittaker." Now, as far as I'm aware, there's only one Patty that was interviewed for the book, and that's Patty O'Hagan. He played Eddie and Dr. Scott in the original London production of the Rocky Horror Show. Jim even has a photo of Patty in the book. And we can take a look at the Rocky Horror scrapbook to see some photos of him in the original show.
Whatever happened to Saturday night? You did the chore, think you felt alright. It don't seem the same since cosmic light came into my life, and I thought I was divine. Go for a ride with the chick who'd go and listen to the music on the radio. A saxophone was blowing on a rock and roll show. You climbed in the back and you really had a good time. Up until it was possible.
Now, I don't have proof that this was Patty O'Hagan's copy, of course, but I did go back and check where the book was shipped from. And it turned out that while I bought the book through Abe Books, it had originated from Book Barn International out of Wells in the UK. Now, I remembered that Patty O'Hagan had sold his house last year. We covered it on a very early episode of the Rocky Talkie podcast. So I went and I looked and did a quick check. Turns out the house he sold was only 16 miles from Book Barn International, and the book went on sale just shortly after the house was sold. So I don't have proof, but I'm pretty darn sure. And that's something that's absolutely fantastic, and something I wasn't even expecting. The listing had noted that the book was signed by the author, but it made no mention of who the inscription was to, so I was beyond excited to discover it, and it makes it all the more interesting and a really cool piece. And for the one guy out there who's screaming at this video, calm down. A, this isn't a movie theater. B, no, this Jim Whittaker is not the same Jim Whittaker that climbed Mount Everest. That guy also wrote a book. I assume it's about, I don't know, mountains, but it doesn't have enough fishnets in it, so I'm not going to actually read through the whole thing. Anyway, no, this Jim Whittaker, well-known in the Rocky community, absolute legend. Did you guys like this one? Leave a comment, rate, subscribe below. Also, check out the rest of our channel for all of our other Rocky Horror content. And make sure to check out the Rocky Talkie podcast. Airs every Thursday wherever you consume your podcasts. Or check out the cool animated version on YouTube. We'll see you next time. Bye!